welcome to Transatlantic Watch Party, our TikTok live / podcast. I am Cara.
I'm Dan.
And this week we are discussing 911 Season 8, Episode 8, the mid-season finale, which was called Wannabes.
Yeah.
And Dan, you're in a different location.
I am. I'm at work today. This is an edit suite. I work at a college and we teach audio and video editing and stuff like that. So like I had to stop at the college to get my power cord for my laptop, which I forgot here on Friday. And I just thought, well, I'll just stay here and do the podcast from here because this is a nice kind of quiet space that I can have to myself. So
with it being all yellow behind you, I thought you'd somehow managed to find your way into that guy's little blockbuster that he set up in his cupboard that made me think of you.
Yeah, that was very, very cool. That's a neat idea.
It's good to see you in blockbuster colours again, Dan. So did you do your bingo card?
I didn't. I have it on my computer, but my computer was dead. Didn't have my charger, so I wasn't able to bring it up. But I think our friend Rob did really well. Is that why he sent us that, or he posted that bingo card about?
I didn't even realize had he ticked stuff off. I hadn't even noticed.
Oh yeah, I don't think that anything's ticked off on it, but I just looked at his card after I watched the episode. And I thought there's a lot of things that should be ticked off on this card because there was like a lot of stuff that was on that. And I thought maybe he was just showing off his card that he got a lot.
I'm one away. I'm one away from a line.
Oh, nice.
So I'm just missing spiked leads to injury. So just keep your eye out for that.
All right. Well, I'm sure
that didn't happen in this episode. I was very disappointed.
But a lot did. It was a good episode.
Yeah, there were a lot of emergencies because we had the additional bonus hot shot emergency.
That was fun. It was a great way to open the show, I thought. With the show within the show, right? To get to see how often do they do that? Like since they brought this Hot Shots storyline in, do they do that often where they show parts of that show?
No, this was the first time we ever saw I think it is the first time we saw like a full-on scene from the show.
Okay.
We've seen a bit in the first episode where you saw that they were filming it, but we haven't seen like a fully produced, underscored, VFX, everything post completed. But I just think the whole meta nature of a show that gets everything wrong technically and medically, critiquing a show for getting everything wrong medically and technically has been one of the most fun things they've ever done.
Now, one thing I could appreciate about this, because oftentimes when they do this kind of thing, they'll show like the scene and it's cut together and they've got the music underneath it and it's produced, right? It's as you would see it on TV. But oftentimes when you see that, they all of a sudden cut away to, they kind of did at the end of the episode where they show it all dramatically, that they cut, and then they see the cameras and the sets and everything. And I'm like, you would never, it would never be that way when you're actually performing the scene. You would only ever see it that way when you're watching it. And as it turns out, they are watching it, right? They're watching an episode in the firehouse, which is great. So I like that. I like that it wasn't that stereotypical cutaway to the making of. Well, although they did do that later, but anyway, I still like that.
Yeah, I think that was probably what we got in the first episode. That's kind of what we had because we saw what the camera was seeing. We saw it all cut together, and then you saw like Brad get out and get trapped by the hose pipe, and the director was like, "Ah!" And then you realized, yeah. But it was so obviously like a full episode. It was so funny when he did that speech and like, oh my god, it was so fantastically cheesy. And it was almost as though 911 were saying, you see, this is what we could be. You could have this. We're so much more serious than that.
I don't know. I think in a way, it's like poking fun at the entire genre of these rescue shows, right? That's what thing it's doing. I think they're overestimating their own like value or fame, I guess, in the world, the way that the people in this universe seem to respond to Brad Torrance. Oh my God, it's Brad Torrance. And they're like, even if it was Peter, what's his name, the star of this show, I don't think he would draw that much of a crowd in any like regular street because not enough people know who he is, right? It's not that big of a show.
Yeah, Yeah, I think a lot of people would be like, hey, it's that guy from 6 Feet Under.
Right, exactly. Yes, they would think of that first. But maybe Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett might draw a crowd. Anybody else on that show might not. And by the way, there's no Jennifer Love Hewitt in this show. She wasn't in this episode.
You heard her voice on one 911 call, but no, she didn't. She didn't physically feature, which is always sad because Maddie's so great. And the only thing I really, because I thought Chimney was surely this was the time for Chimney to come out with a banger of a comedy line, and he didn't. He just made a very good point. But Eddie, when Eddie uses the F word, which is fake, Brad gets all upset, and he says, oh my God, he used the F word. And he's like, no, F like fun, like Buck said. And Buck's face, I'm like, don't drag me into this.
That was good. One I really like the way that when he asked for criticism and both Hen and Buck said this almost the same thing at the same time, was a spreader or whatever they said. Oh yes, and the network said spreader would be too provocative, like that. But I like the way they both knew the right word for it. The spreader, that's what you call it, right? But they made some kind of weird pneumatic name for it and that kind of stuff. Like he's just angry at the network for all their notes. That was fun.
I like, and just to skip to the end, I like that Hen is always mentions the music.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, she's like, there's gonna be music under this, right? Look at her eyes.
Like, this isn't moving at all. If you took the music out, this would be terrible. Which is true of a lot of things, because you always see those little, videos of like where they've replaced the music with something else, and suddenly like a horror film becomes comedy. It was a nice sort of nod to the score writers, because they do make a massive difference to anything that you watch.
Absolutely, yeah, music makes a difference for sure. So then we move on to the parking lot situation with the cart cop. And this is Athena's main storyline this episode, where she has to deal with. And at first I wasn't, it's interesting how, I guess it's always like if it's a cop situation, she responds, right? She's the only cop in this group, so she's going to respond to it. And this guy is going around like, I don't know. I've never encountered anybody like this in my life. I would never want to encounter anyone like this. Is this based on a real thing? I don't know. Maybe it seems like it could happen somewhere. But this guy who's just like getting after everybody for not putting their carts away. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is just ridiculous.
Yeah, he is. I mean, top notch irritating. And shame doesn't work. That's not how people don't respond well to it. What I really didn't like was when he was like, she said, oh, they pay that guy. And he's like, that guy is a senior citizen. He's possibly a veteran. And I really hate the use of veterans in the States. Like, yeah, don't give them any full support or the money or the treatment that they deserve. Just use them as it just made me feel so icky. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we got the 911 call, and they were like, there's a riot. And they showed the people, and I was like, have you ever seen a riot?
That's what I said. Hardly a riot in the parking lot, I wrote. That's just a bunch of angry people upset because they can't leave the parking lot. Yeah, that's what's on right.
Yeah, they can't leave the parking lot. And also, I mean, most of them are just standing around filming it and like having a good time. They're loving it. And it made me think of, there was an episode of SWAT very early on in SWAT where like there was something had happened, and like a cop had arrested an immigrant, or something, and people came and protested at the SWAT headquarters, and the main head guy came in and was talking to his sort of second in command, and she's got all these screens of what's happening outside, and he goes, it's getting dangerous. And you could see the screens behind her. There were like 6 people with banners. And I was like, you're SWAT. Like, no wonder the police can't de-escalate anything if you think that's dangerous.
Yeah. But as it turns out, Athena could de-escalate it. She just had to yell at everybody, which is what she always does. But you don't ignore Athena when she yells at you. Even the lady was like, didn't want to put her card away, was like, fine, I'll put my card away. I'm like, Jesus.
But did she? Or did she aim that car at Athena's cop car?
You think that's what happened? Oh my God.
Somebody did, and I'm amazed that they weren't immediately arrested.
Yeah, that was very obvious to somebody like, deliberately pushed that cart into the car. I just assumed it was somebody not paying attention, but yeah, that's hilarious.
Because we didn't see who pushed it. I was like, that could be the mystery for the show. And also, how does Athena not know what a shirker is?
Yeah, I don't know.
That
Weird.
seems really weird.
It felt really weird the amount of times they were saying it in that scene. So just it was one of those times when the word stops losing meaning, it's like, or stops meaning anything. It's like I don't know what this means anymore. But it's funny the way they were using it. Like it was a funny scene, and yeah, I guess it was just all these sort of setup of what was to come later.
Yeah, and I like the lady saying like, here, he vandalized my car, and Athena's like, yeah, for it to be vandalism, there has to be damage, and that's a magnet.
Not damage. So yeah, but it was an interesting situation. I thought it was quite funny. That like somebody would do this for. I mean, it seems plausible they would do it for the YouTube views, but this person really seemed to be like passionate about shopping carts, and we see that like play out later in the episode, which is kind of funny, right? It's just like.
And then we move on to Eddie making his FaceTime call to Christopher. It was nice to see Christopher again. We haven't seen nearly enough of him. He was made a season regular last year, and I swear to God, we've never seen less of him. Like, I was just every day, every week, his name comes up in the credits. And so I get really excited that we're going to see Gavin, and he's never in it because he still gets the credit. Whereas, like, if it's another character that you're like, oh, I wonder if we're going to get, like, Josh, you could see in the credits if he's going to be in it. But Gavin's just been, like, waved at us like some kind of shiny toy. Like, oh, look, Gavin's going to... And then he's never in it. So it was really good to see Christopher again.
Yeah.
Did you notice that Eddie did not sit on the comfortable couch to call his son? He sat on the uncomfortable coffee table. That seemed really pointed.
Oh, yes. And then later on, Buck moves him back over to the couch, right? At the end of that scene where Buck was talking to him. Yeah, I did not notice that. That's a good point, though. I bet you're right. That's like where he does the serious talks.
Yeah, he doesn't feel comfortable talking to his son, so he doesn't allow himself comfort.
Yeah.
Oh, Eddie, he's really going through it.
I agree. And I got to say losing the mustache really does change his look. Like I don't recognize him in larger scenes. Like when they cut to everyone watching that scene from the show. And I'm like, where's Eddie in this situation? Oh, he's the guy there not having a mustache. It's weird. It's weird not seeing him.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, I can completely understand why. Yeah, because you've only known him with a mustache. So.
Exactly.
So, and yes. Anything more to say about that scene? It was kind of...
No, we'll come back to I think that, I mean, it's good that they're addressing that storyline and that we do have some movement in that later in the episode. So like they haven't really touched that for a while, except to have him do a Zoom call every once in a while and check in on him. And that's pretty much it. Right. So, and we did get that. But we also got some more like Eddie's moving forward with something. He's actually going to do something about the situation instead of just sitting there wallowing in his own self-misery. So
yeah. Stop punishing yourself, Eddie. Go and do something about it. So then we move on to the scene where we get the first proper... I mean, I know we've had a 911 call, but it didn't involve the 118. So we get the first proper 118 call. My first thought was, wow, that woman found a great parking spot outside where she works. Amazing.
That's not gonna happen. The most unrealistic thing about this show is the ease of how they get parking.
Yeah. And she notices the smell, and then we get the reckless driving, and I don't think the car causes the accident. It's the actual testing of the pipes that causes it. That the guy says it just went off like a bomb, and his car gets blown into the air. Turns upside down. It's an absolute nightmare. And when the 118 turn up, the guy who's like introducing them to what's happened is like, his car blew up, he's okay. And I'm like, is he? I can't believe that's not the person we're dealing with.
I'm kidding, eh? Yeah. And this is what I noticed, like when I thought about Rob's bingo card, and that explosion was definitely one of the squares on that bingo card. And the other one was man standing on top of car, which we got during the scene as well, because Buck had to get up on top of that car. I think it was. for a while. And even as they were like yanking it out to pull it out of there, he was still on top of it, I guess, right? That was
And Bobby shouted out, "Be safe, Buck, hang on." And Buck indeed did not hang on. He may as well have just had waving his hands in the air. Like, he wasn't hanging on to nothing.
no. But I also thought in that situation, like they show up there and Brad is with them and Brad is an actor and he's there as an observer. He should not be dressed as a firefighter. Like that's like something that they should not be letting him put the whole gear on. He could have like maybe a normal jacket or a t-shirt or something that says fire department, but not like the full gear. Like, so he just looks like a firefighter like everybody else.
That man should be in a dorky high vis and he should be grateful for it. Like the fact that he's got like the helmet on and everything's ridiculous. And I kind of think he's done that of his own accord and they didn't, they haven't had the time to stop him. But like he's that man is a one man avalanche. You know, once he starts rolling, you're not going to stop him. Yeah, but I thought it was funny how they were like, yeah, you know, when they were critiquing the Hot Shots scene, they were like, yeah, we'd put out the fire in the vehicle before extracting the driver, you know, to make sure it doesn't blow up while you're in there. And then they got to the car and the people, like, the water's like here, you know, like at mouth level. And they get the roof open before breaking the window to let the water out. And I was like, I feel like you did that the wrong way around, guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that was a good scene. And then so Brad gets in trouble because he sees, like, he's just sitting there back and then he gathers a crowd. No, this is the other place where he gathers a crowd. Or is it both?
No, this is where he notices something.
Right.
Despite the fact of however many actual fire department people there are, none of them have looked at the other cars. Like, absolutely astonishingly poor behaviour from that fire department. And he notices someone else who has been trapped. And because he knows absolutely nothing about actual medical things, he does the most dangerous thing in the world. Just pulls her out of the car and doesn't check her over.
Did not check her vitals, did not check to see if she had a broken spine or anything. And yeah, he thinks he's being this big hero. And I think people give him a round of applause for it, but they're like, no. That's not you could have killed her. And then Bobby reams him out when they get back to the station, right?
Yes, they do. We do have one of my least favorite. Are they movement lights?
No, it's on a timer. And if I don't move around, it's like this is energy saving lights, right? So it'll go off every 20 minutes or so, I guess.
I stayed in a house once when I was doing a show at Buxton Opera House, and they had that in the living room. In the living room. So you'd just be sitting, so all of us would be sitting there reading or chatting or whatever. And then the lights would go off and then we'd all be like flinging our arse in the air. And I'm like, why is this in the living room? It's ridiculous. So we got one of my least favourite tropes. You know, when I was saying I hate it when people scream at the fire department, help him. And I'm like, that's what they're doing. Leave it. The guy in the car being like, I'm not leaving her. Sir, you are not helping.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to achieve here? Just get out of the car.
And this scene, I think, had the best Chimney line when he says, I'm thinking we can cut it right off. The wheel, not the leg. The wheel, not the leg. Right? That was a good line.
Yes, that is the line I wrote down. I think that's the one that Dan's going to pick for Chim's line of the... It's despite all of the stuff at the end of the show.
Yes, well, that was funny party too. But yeah, I just felt like the...
Yeah, this was the most Chim moment. Yeah.
For sure.
Oh yeah, the other thing when Brad put that woman down on the gurney, the thunk that her head made as he like dropped her on the gurney and her head fell back and hit the metal of the gurney.
Oh no!
And I was like, that's a sound choice there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely, they did that. Oh wow! Emphasizing how careless he's like, I caught her on the bloody gurney. What did we say?
Got her on the bloody car, didn't I? Then we go back to the firehouse, and Cap absolutely tears him a new one. Absolutely right. There was a little bit of a continuity issue in the background of that, so I was obviously very happy. When they're taking their turnouts off, you see when Bobby and Brad are talking, you see Eddie leaning up against the fire truck, and then it cuts to him in a close-up, and he's standing next to the cage where they were putting the turnouts on to get cleaned. Then it pulls back again, and he's up against the fire truck. And in the next shot, he's up against the cage again. And I'm like, Eddie is running around like a madman in the back of this scene.
Oh, they need to hire you. They need to hire you for their look at all this stuff.
I mean, the thing is that I notice these things after they've happened. The reason that they happen is that you cannot keep an eye on everything. Like, I get that. It must be a nightmare to be a script supervisor.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to keep the script in line, which on a show like 911 is chaotic. You know, I remember in the first episode of season 7, we got an incident where a fighter plane like crashed into a house, and the pilot told them what kind of plane it was, and it was a F-65. I don't know. And then later in the episode, Chimney said to Maddie, "Oh well, you know, I saw a house today that an F-85 had landed on it," and I was like, "Who's wrong?" Because I feel like Chim should be wrong because the fighter pilot should know which kind of plane he's flying. But like, don't you? Who? That seemed like something they just missed.
Yeah.
Even just keeping your eye on that kind of stuff, you know. So noticing, like, I feel like the script supervisors come in for a lot of, you know, like when I criticize continuity things, people always go, "Oh, there's someone on set that's meant to notice that," and I'm like, yeah, but also, like, the actors can take a little bit of responsibility, you know. Like, unless they obviously took that shot of Eddie, maybe they took it from something else.
Yeah.
And then it's an editorial decision, and so that's their fault, you know. And we have things all the time where they like reverse a shot because you need somebody to be looking the other way, and they suddenly go, "Oh, we never got a shot of that, so we need them." And like somebody's head injury will move from one side to the other, and they'll be like, and people will go, "I can't believe the script supervisor didn't notice." And I'm like, that's because it didn't happen then. You know.
Yeah.
So I wish I'd known that script supervisor was a job when I was a kid, and I could have gone into that because I genuinely just find the whole thing so interesting, and I love all the tiny details that make you believe in the world that you're watching.
Yeah.
You know, because that's why I don't like big continuity errors, because then I'm like, well, you're just taking me out of the world. Little ones, though, they're just really fun.
Yeah, and you don't even notice them. The cool thing is that it doesn't take you out of this world. Like, those kinds of things just go on and whatever. But you still so compelled by the characters and the story that you just forgive all that stuff, right? It doesn't matter.
That's why I watch these episodes twice, so that once I can enjoy it the first time, and then the second time I watch it like this. What's happening in the background?
I have this episode's that guy from an older actor who's been around for a long time. And it is the actor who played the other cop, the one who's investigating the cop guy. Do you know who this guy is?
That is Danny Nucci, and he plays my favorite guy in Titanic.
Oh, yeah, he's in Titanic, too. Yes, he's in Titanic, but also Crimson Tide. I think of him from Crimson Tide. He's one of the guys who, he's the Italian guy, Titanic. That's right. He's like, "Con, sonar." But he says the whole time, "Con, sonar, sonar, con." He's like the guy reporting to the captain and stuff. I just remember him so distinctly. And as soon as I saw him, I knew immediately who he was. But apparently I looked him up, and he's been in this series before. He's a recurring character.
Yes, he is, which is why I didn't tick off that guy, because I know who he is. You know,
It doesn't count, I mean, as an actor who's been around for a long time and only really had bit parts, you know, like, but you recognize him from big things like Titanic for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah. I didn't recognize him, but when the name came up in the credits the first time he appeared in the show, I was like, Danny Nucci, isn't that guy from Titanic?
I completely forgot about that one too. I haven't seen Titanic that much. I know. That was cool.
No, I haven't, but he left an impression on me at a young age. So yes, so they go back into they discover the guy first, and the cop who has been jumped, and they tip him out of the car. I mean, as gently as possible, but no checking for a neck injury there.
Well, made a point to put a thing on him. They whatever it is.
Put a seat collar on him, and then Chimney says he can't find a pulse. And again, I'm not a medical professional, but he says he can't. There's no pulse, and that man rubs his sternum. I don't know if that restarts somebody's heart.
I assume that was a thing that they do.
Like, that's what you do when someone's passed out, and you're. Or like if they're in a coma and you're checking, and again, this is just stuff I'm getting from Grace, so I could be completely wrong. But like if you're checking their pain response, because that hurts. So if somebody's passed out and you rub their sternum, it makes it go, but it seems to me if you don't have a pulse.
I thought he was dead. I assumed he was dead. Like they find him like that, under the thing, not breathing, no pulse. He was alive. They brought him back to life. They saved him.
Sounds pretty dead to me.
He was pretty dead. I think he was. They didn't even talk about that. How many minutes were you dead for? Or anything like that. Did you see a light? Nothing like that. No, he was.
And then we go visit him in the hospital room, and it's a different hospital room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's special. He got a different hospital room.
Well, they just updated their sets.
Yeah, they had a new set for that day. And yes, so we got the whole writing down of a YouTube link, which I always found quite funny because it's not a link if you can't click it. Like, I'm writing down a web address for you.
Yeah, and so they have to go and find the person who beat up the cart cop, and so they have to bring in all the people he harassed. They've got this kind of montage of all the people that he harassed in the parking lot. So they bring them all in for questioning. And honestly, I thought it was going to be the security guard. I totally thought. I fell for the red herring because they were obviously teasing him to be the guy, right? But I was surprised by who it turned out to be.
When they were going through the clips, and we've skipped a scene here, but when they were going through the clips, I thought the cart guy looked suspicious, but I couldn't have told you why he would have hurt the cart cop. But there was something about it. Also, it was just after we saw him and the security guard, that clip that Athena did one of those, and you're like, oh, okay, so they were definitely leading us towards the security guard.
Yeah.
But I watched too many procedurals, so I always go like, red herring!
Now I know better. I should know better because I know that's a common trope. But what did we skip? We skipped the scene. Was it where Eddie gets advice from Brad?
Yes. And the first thing I noticed was that he calls Eddie Edmundo. So not only does he know, does he know his name? Because we find out later he does not know Buck's name. He knows that he is Edmundo, and when Eddie first joined the 118, he and Buck didn't get on for one episode, and he said, "Oh, so what's Eddie short for? Is it Eduardo?" And he just went, "No." And I mean that was probably just Buck being a jackass and Eddie not wanting to help. But how did Brad dig deep enough to find out that this man is called Edmundo?
He does his research. I don't know.
Yeah. And so he's chatting to him. And I feel like with this episode and episode 806, what we have learnt is that guest stars should not give main actors advice because they always take it too far. Because Josh was like, hey, don't judge Tommy too harshly. And Buck went, okay, not only that, I will ask him to move in with me and it will end our relationship. And, Brad said to Eddie, look, just don't let you and your son get any further apart. And Eddie's like, okay, I'll move to Texas.
Well, I mean, to me, it seemed like the natural way to go. I kind of agree with Eddie's choice there. It was like a wake up call, I think, to him, right? That like, but let me ask you this, and I feel like you've covered this before, but maybe I'm just not paying attention. Why did Chris move to Texas? What was the reason for that?
Now, yes, we heard this when he was talking to the priest, because you remember he said to the priest, he walked in on me and his dead mother, and the priest was like, "I'm sorry, say what now?" So Eddie went on a series of dates with a woman who was the exact doppelganger of his dead wife, played by the same woman. Absolutely brilliant. Very Vertigo. Very good. And so, yes, and he eventually told her about Shannon and said, we can't see each other anymore, because Buck met her, and nobody knew about her. And she came to the firehouse, and Buck was like, he was the only one there, and he was like, oh my God, I'm seeing things. And so he went to see Eddie and was like, dude, I'm worried about you. And Eddie was like, yeah, I'm worried about me too. So he told her, he showed her a picture of Shannon. He said, I'm so sorry. This is why we got involved. I feel terrible. But yes, we can't see, obviously. We won't see each other anymore, because you definitely won't ever want to see me again. And then she came back to his house, and she had her hair done like Shannon.
Oh.
Like, she'd cut bangs, she dyed it brown. She looked like, obviously, because it's the same woman. But anyway, she made herself look like Shannon. She walked into Eddie's house and made him sort of confront the loss of his wife.
Okay.
Very bad choice on her part. Very unfair to Eddie. And Chris walked in on them, and Eddie's girlfriend at the time. So that was the end of Eddie's girlfriend. But Chris just walked in and said, Mum? Horrified, like, messed him up so much, obviously. And he called his grandparents and said, I'm out of here.
Okay.
And they came and took him to Texas. So it's completely justified on Chris's part for him not to. And that's why, like, Eddie knows that. And that is why he hasn't pushed, and he hasn't forced him to come back. And he's sort of listening to his mum tell him all these things about his son, even though his mum's been trying to take Chris away from him from like day dot. Like, he really thinks it's completely justified on Chris's part. Which is why I think he would make the decision to go to Texas rather than to go to Texas, bring Chris back.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, okay. Well, that makes, like, I wasn't sure. So this is all about Eddie's in action, right? It's about him just sitting there and doing nothing while Chris lives with his parents. He just works and doesn't really, and just kind of puts it off. And then he gets all upset when, he learns he's learning chess and he's going to be in a tournament and all these things are happening that he's missing out on, right? So that's, yeah.
And the other thing is, Eddie was in the army when Chris was born. And then they found out that Chris was sick, and he re-signed up for the army. So he was there for 2 tours. So he missed like the first sort of 3 years of Chris's life. And he's never forgiven himself for that. And that was where I wanted to scream at him, you are different to Brad, because Brad chose not to go back, and you always went back. He has always gone back to Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And this was why I was again like, stop listening to the guest stars. They don't fully know the conversation of what they're dealing with.
But it is a wake up call. Like, I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to have like it be years and years. Like, it's what starts as 3 months could grow to a longer period, right? That could happen very easily. So I think it was like just oh shit, I got to do something. And so then, yeah, he's looking at real estate listings. And was that product placement for homes.com?
Someone else pointed this out. I didn't know. I assumed not, because I thought homes.com sounded like a fake website. So like that, it seemed such an obvious thing that I thought it can't possibly be. But what's really funny is someone pointed that out and said the last time we got such blatant product placement was the episode where Buck discovered his bisexuality, realized his bisexuality, because there was this whole thing with like basketball and whatnot, and he ordered a basketball to be delivered to the firehouse so that Eddie would see it. and they were like this big Amazon box was suddenly in the show, and we were like, what wormage? So yes, it did seem like a really weird bit of product placement, but we're skipping to the end.
Okay, sorry.
Which we shouldn't done. So let's get back to the cart guy, because this is the point where we get them like, let's bring him in. Who? All of them. And then they did one of my favorite things, which is one conversation with multiple people. I love those.
Okay. Yeah, because you have one answer, and then they come back to Athena, and they come back to a different person, and it all works together because they're all responding to each other to the same questions and answers. Yeah, that's a great way of doing that.
Yeah, it's so quick and snappy and clever and funny, and that's one of my favorite things that in writing. I really enjoy it when they do that. And yes, and that's where again they are leading us towards the security guard. So yes, nobody has the correct shoe size. Then we get the guy who is apparently going to throw himself off.
Oh yes.
Bridge. And I thought it was really funny that he sort of he stumbles, and they're setting up the bag beneath him. And I was really hoping that he was going to do like large laps, and we were going to get he's over the bag, he's not over the bag, he's over the bag. But we didn't get that. But it's not that big a bag. That's a big space. He could choose to jump off at any point, and they're not necessarily going to catch him. And there's a point where he stumbled and he fell to his knees, and I was like, grab him.
Yeah, I mean, you just hold him off, right? Yeah.
They went, what? We're going to give him his space. Like, no. You could have fixed this in 30 seconds. Oh, guys.
There was a nice moment in there where Bobby's like, Jim. Like, he's like, are you up yet? Like, ready to go? Because they thought he was going to fall and he didn't. But that was
when Brad was like, let's go together.
Yeah.
20 more seconds.
As it turns out, this guy is a fan of Brad Torrance and the show Hot Shots. He binged the first 3 seasons after his wife left him. And then he's thinking about killing himself because he lost his job, right? This is why he's up on the ledge, on the bridge. Yes. But they get Brad over to talk to him. Brad's basically saying, let's go, let's do it. And then this guy ends up talking Brad out of killing himself, saying, you mean so much to so many people, and you mean so much to me. So he ends up talking him down.
The way he was like, just wind blowing his hair and his face, and he's like disheveled, and he's not having a good day. And then he's like, is that Brad Torrance? And like starts fixing his appearance. It was so cute. And I did enjoy it when they got Brad over to talk to him, and he went, I thought you'd be taller. And Brad was like, you're standing on a ledge. That was a very nice moment. And he could have very easily said to the people who were like asking for selfies and stuff, so when they noticed that it was Brad Torrance hanging around the fire truck, he could have said, guys, I'm working. Like, it would have been very easy, but this guy is so desperate for attention. And I say that as an actress, I've always said the thing I really miss since I got sick and I can't perform anymore, the thing I really miss is applause. Oh my God, you can't replace that feeling, man. So I get it. But yes, he could have easily just said, guys, there's a man over there who's going through one of the worst moments of his life. How about we don't do this right here? Oh yeah, and then when you've got that classic thing of the person coming over to talk, just like calling their bluff and being like, fine, we'll do it together. But then they get him down and they put him on a gurney, and I'm like, why is he on a gurney? He's fine. He could walk to the ambulance. It's fine.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So they had him on oxygen and stuff, and I was like, this just seems seems like overkill. It's because Hen and Chim were down at the bottom, so they didn't have the proper medics. They didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah, that's right. And did we cut to the scene there where they're shooting it when he comes out of the coma?
No, we've got way more to go.
I should-
Because then, straight after that, we get Buck turning up at Eddie's house and discovering
yes, that's the house conversation.
discovering that. And he's like, "What you looking at, Eddie? What are you looking at on your arm? I'm not gonna look. It might be personal." And when we didn't see what he was scrolling for, and he's like, "I can't handle that," all that. And so I think we were meant to think it was like a dating site,
Okay.
or I don't. A spreader of some kind, but I don't know I don't know if they'd be brave enough to do that. But the idea that Buck was just like, "Are you watching
Mm-hmm.
like in your kitchen in a nice shirt? Like, what's happening here? Are you okay?"
At the serious table.
Yeah, and then he picks it up. Let's see what you're looking at. And the fact that he doesn't immediately notice that the property isn't in LA. And this poor man, he's just been broken up with. He has serious abandonment issues, and his best friend didn't tell him he was even thinking of moving to El Paso. And he goes and he's like, "Let's move," and he's being all supportive, and then his little face falls.
Yeah. Oh, he's a good friend though.
Yeah.
No, Eddie was worried about it. Eddie was like, "Oh, he's going to be mad. He's going to be upset." He wasn't. Or if he was, he didn't show it. He was like, "Oh, let's go find some."
Couldn't even look him in the eye when he was like, "Yeah, I'm talking to a realtor. I don't know." And it was very sweet, but the look on his face, like, just poor Buck. Poor Eddie as well. This situation that they're both in is so sad.
I think it's interesting that Eddie is thinking about moving there instead of bringing Chris back, because it shows that he's kind of like aware of that Chris is building a life for himself in El Paso. Things seem to be going pretty well for Chris in El Paso, right? With the chess club and everything and his friends. He's always like busy and doing stuff. He doesn't want to tear him away from all that.
Yeah, it's not like he didn't have that in LA. He was a very popular kid. He was dating multiple girls at one time. He's very popular. He had a full and content life here. I think with Eddie thinking of moving back to Texas, I think again it's something about his mum said before they moved to LA the first time when Chris was like 6 or 7. His mum said to him, "Don't drag him down with you." And I think that's always played on Eddie's mind. So, at this point, I think it's like when he moves to El Paso, will he even take Eddie from his grandparents, or will he just move somewhere and so that he can still be in his life? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he's really punishing himself, and he doesn't want to do anything to endanger a future relationship with Chris. So he's willing to put himself out, a lot to get that. And it just feels very sort of tied in with who he is in his family. Because he has a massive support system in LA. Chris is a huge part of the 118 family. So it's not like he doesn't have familial support in LA, and it's not like Chris doesn't have a life there. I just think Eddie's sort of falling back into the old pattern of, my parents think that's what's best, and maybe that's what's best, So I need him to bring Chris back to LA. He can go to El Paso, that's fine. And then Buck can go and get Eddie and Chris and bring them both back to LA. Get that little family unit back together, because it's really sad that it's not there.
Aww.
So then we go back to Ira, the cart guy, who it turns out is very much not a veteran.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised by that. I didn't think that's where that was going, because I wouldn't think that would be. He's not. Yeah, he's got a bad background, right? which is and it just shows that you can't judge a book by its cover, right? You can't look at an old man and think he's just this frail little guy that just is innocent. So that was an interesting twist.
And then that's where we got what I think was sort of the most groany line of the show, but the biggest gag that they'd been like, oh, we're going to put this in. When he said, I had to put my foot down. And he'd stomped on the guy's face, and that's how they caught him. So I was like, mwah, lovely, lovely, well done. And then, yeah, like, Athena takes the file and just shows it to this court cop guy. I don't think you should be doing that, Athena. And she's like, oh, he's been arrested. He's like, and he's like, for what? Pushing hard candy, which was very, very silly. But the whole speech that Athena did when she was like, you and I both wish that people would make, the right choices. They would choose to do the right thing. So we have to set an example. And I'm like, Athena, you pointed a gun in an innocent man's face and accused him of burning your house down. You are not the person to talk about setting an example of choosing to do the right thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like wondering about this guy now. So he gets the old man's job that he's been arrested. So he's going to be the new cart guy now. I'm like, well, that's not like, now he's going to just annoy everybody all the time. Like, can he not? I don't know.
It's ridiculous. The idea that the owner of that store would have seen this lad harassing their customers for weeks and then be like, do you know what? We'll give him a job and he can do that and we'll pay him. That's no.
No. And I don't know. And I think like there was some kind of a indication that was the reason that Ira was upset, because he was something like he was taking away his job or something. Was it? Was there something line in there?
Yes, there was that. But there was also, for him, he was on the run, wasn't he? So he definitely wouldn't have wanted to be on that guy's camera. But yeah, he was like, he's taking my job. And then he literally did.
Yeah.
In the most unlikely turn of it. And he was really happy about it. Like, it was like, oh, I get to collect cards. Way.
Like, that's more important to him than the YouTube channel or the justice of like bringing people to justice and shaming them for not returning their carts. Like, I guess he gets to do that still, but part of his job to do that? I don't know. I thought their job was just to collect them no matter what. I've never been shamed about not returning my cart, which I've not done many, many times. Sorry we have this, but
well, to be honest, Dan, I don't think we can do this podcast anymore.
What are you vice versa?
The lights gone off in Dan's studio. Dan is being judged. He's been plunged into darkness because sometimes he doesn't return his trolley.
Yeah.
And then, so now that that's all neatly wrapped up in a bow, we get the final scene to end all final scenes, where I must admit, I had no idea what was happening. I was like, is this the rehearsal? Have they set this up like in the firehouse?
Too. I did kind of get it after the first couple of lines. I think I got it when Chimney showed up. Because at first it was hilarious that like Buck, his acting is awful. His line delivery is horrible. And that's hilarious. And they had a fun little joke where it's like, I can't believe the accent thing. That's so funny, right? And he's the British one on the cast. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was nice to get one final accent gag in before Brad disappeared off into the sunset. But yeah, I didn't know what was happening because you couldn't really tell that it was Buck and Eddie. But then when Chim turned up and you were like, oh, I think I know what's going on. That confused me even more. That's when I started thinking, oh, this is like Chim just messing around. Like, it seemed like the kind of thing that Chim would do while he was on the clock. Do you know what I mean? I expect that of Chim.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. And I think I don't know if you, because you're not on like 911 TikTok or anything, so you probably haven't seen it. They had a behind the scenes shot of them filming that little scene. And like Eddie says his line and then disappears off. And then because he can't walk out of the scene because of where the camera is, he's like hugging the wall, you know, he's just like this. And he's mouthing all the lines, like, and it's really funny. And then Buck, Oliver Stark, gets his line wrong. And he goes, "Oh, you're a real captain, hero." And, you know, and the shot's on Chim, so it doesn't matter because they're doing that coverage. So he knows he's not on camera. So he says the line and he's like, very serious. And then he goes, like, because he very realizes he's got his line wrong, but he's not going to ruin the tape for everyone else. But there's just that silent moment of him going, and like Eddie's just Ryan doing the lines, and so he says the right line, he mouths the right line, then he's like,
But they're doing it again. They went again anyway because Brad got a bunch of notes from Hen, and who else was there? I can't remember. And Eddie, I guess, or whoever. Not Eddie. Brad or Bobby, whoever else was there.
And Bobby was very supportive and very nice, and Hen was pulling her hen face, which was like, I don't know, it wasn't good. And did you notice he called her Henrietta? So it's Henrietta and Edmundo. So that makes me wonder if we never heard him refer to Chimney. I wonder if he calls him Howard, because that's his real name. And then he calls Buck Chuck. He's the only one whose name he doesn't know.
He calls Bobby Bob, doesn't he?
Yes, but I mean, that's still, that's still his name. But yeah, but he yes, it's funny that, actually, that he doesn't call him Robert. But yeah, the fact that he doesn't know Buck's name. That's just so funny.
Yeah.
And that line about it being orphan night and the boy.
You saved them all. Yeah.
Oh, I remember it was orphan night. Oh my God, Hot Shots is the worst show, and I would eat it up.
Yeah, they're having a lot of fun with that. So you think that's it for Brad? We're not going to see him again?
Yes, and he also sort of put up an Instagram post that was very like, "I've really enjoyed my time on 911."
Oh, okay.
So I think we've wrapped that up. I mean, he might come back, but he got a really big, final episode.
Yeah, he was in this a lot, and he had a lot to do, so yeah.
Yeah, it was, I mean, we don't often get a guest star-centric episode. We had one where we kept seeing the same woman because she was cursed, and so, all of the emergencies were her. All these terrible things kept happening to her. And we had an episode with a character that you haven't met yet, which I'm heartbroken about because she's fabulous, which is Sue, who is the manager at the dispatch center.
Oh.
And she was attacked. She was hit by a car. So we didn't see much of her, but the whole investigation was about, she'd seen something and, so someone attacked her. But it's very rare that we get a fully guest star centric episode, and this felt very Brad centric,
Mm-hmm. It really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool.
How did it feel for you in terms of it being a mid-season finale? Because I don't have mid-season finales, so I don't know if we're meant to have a cliffhanger or not. Because nothing kind of happened. So
no, I agree. I think we got a little bit of movement on the Eddie Chris story, but I think that I'm not really I don't really follow shows regularly enough to do mid-season finale. The reason they're doing this is because they can only produce so many episodes for the year, so they have to take a break because they still want it to end in May when their big ratings period is. So they have to wait. So however weeks, 14 weeks, and then they're going to come back and have a big run at the end. This is what the reality of network television now. They don't always do a big cliffhanger thing. I remember they used to, what the hell is this doing? I have to drag a puzzle piece. Oh, I've got 5 minutes left in my live. Okay. Oh, I think someone bought, I dragged the puzzle piece in place. It's not working. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Why does this always happen to you? It doesn't happen when I host.
There we go. I did it. Okay. That's so weird. All right. What were we talking about?
Mid-season finales. And
yeah. I think it could. Either way, I think the last scene there was a big kind of fun scene. That's what you want to end on, is a big funny note or big impactful note like that. So I think that was what that was all about, and bringing all of this Hot Shot stuff together, having them guest star on the show, and having them do all that stuff. I think that was meant to be the end of that storyline, and it worked really well. I love that. I love the whole behind the scenes thing, and that they were consulting on this show within the show. I'm always a big fan of that in any form of storytelling.
And they had like behind the scenes people from 911 in, like, the makeup artist that was working on Chim is their makeup artist.
Oh, that's cool. Okay,
That's really nice. And they had that because they did that, I think, in Superman and Lois, in an episode of that, in the final season that's out at the moment, where they had like an episode of TV, and I was like, is this just all the people who work on Superman and Lois? Like, being in an episode of Superman, and it was really great. But I kind of feel like I'd have expected them to flip it, so we kind of got the Eddie bombshell being the last thing that we saw.
yeah.
So I was surprised when we had like more scenes, you know. It's like, oh, that's not. I thought it was gonna, the music was gonna start playing. Yes. So 14 weeks before 911 comes back, and you and I are going to watch Pan Am in that time.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah. So are you watching anything else good? I know you were watching Fisk, was that?
Yeah, I'm done Fisk. The one I watched, we just watched it today, and we're both hooked. It's called Rivals. It's on Disney Plus over here. I don't know.
That?
Rivals. It's about it's a British show. It's British actors. It's about TV in England in the 80s, and it's based. My girlfriend says it's based on a series of books by an author. I can't remember her name.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's the Jilly Cooper. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the series. So it's a series, and so the series is called Rivals. It's on Disney Plus here. It stars David Tennant and a bunch of other people you would recognize. Danny Dyer, which was hilarious because he came up. We were watching an episode of Richard Ayoade's travel show. You know that show?
Yes.
And so he made a reference to Danny Dyer in that show. And then the next day we're watching this, and it says Danny Dyer. It's hilarious. But it's really good. It's very like dramatic intrigue. It reminds me of like a British Dallas or Falcon Crest, or those shows about these rich families that kind of do all these things, you know?
Yes. And it's set in like the horse racing industry or
No,
something.
that's part of it. One of the characters used to do that. My girlfriend explained it to me, like there's a whole bunch of books and they all are connected. They're all about different things. So there is one about show running or show jumping when the guy, like, they jump over the horses and stuff. And this one guy is super famous for doing this, but it's more about this one's about David Tennant's character because he owns a TV network, and they have this thing where they can get a franchise, but every 5 years someone can come and outbid you for that franchise, and they take over the broadcast rights. So they have to fight for the franchise race, and they poach this guy from the BBC, this really popular presenter. So they poach him, they bring him over, and it's really, really good. I really like it. Right.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, I do. I have heard good things about that, and someone I know is a big Jilly Cooper fan, so she was very excited when they started doing that. I've been watching High Potential, which stars the woman from Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a procedural, and it's just this woman with this incredibly high IQ who like can't keep a job because she can't function in the world. She's too far. And she stumbles her way into consulting for the police. And I am completely in love with it. And I watched 7 episodes of it, and it's on a blooming hiatus. It's had its mid-season finale. So now I have to wait for that to come back. I have to wait for 911 to come back. So thank God The Rookie is starting in January. You know, that'll get me through some dark times. And then I just watched the first episode of Matlock, which is the Cassie Bates.
Yeah. I saw an ad for that. Is it good?
I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
The way it's played, that first episode is very clever. And I think it's going to be one of those sort of long game, you know, it's got one plot that's going to go for the whole season, but within every episode there's going to be like a procedural subplot.
Oh, okay.
And I do enjoy those. So I'm gonna keep watching that. I think that's
I'm gonna check that out. I was looking at that one. Am I too old? Am I old enough to be watching Matlock? Is the question, right? At a certain age, you have to be old to watch Matlock.
No, I absolutely not. Yeah, no, it's very much just a procedural, you know, and it's got because she's like working with the interns.
Mhm.
So
I think that the stereotype of old people liking Matlock came from The Simpsons. That's where because Grandpa's
is Matlock a real show?
what?
Is Matlock a real show?
Matlock was this is a remake.
Yeah, no, it's not.
What?
Yeah, you need to watch the first episode.
It's not a remake of the show with Andy Griffith?
No,
Matlock?
well, they talk about it, but I mean, I don't know because I haven't seen the original Matlock, but I don't think it is. That's more of a like jumping off point, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
I'll have to look up the original now to see, because I didn't realize it was a real show.
Straight up, it was like one of the original courtroom dramas of like Matlock's in the courtroom proving his point and getting people to confess on the stand. Very much like what was the other one that's similar to that? I can't remember now.
Like,
oh,
they mention him.
Perry Mason.
Mason, yes, yeah.
Very similar to Perry Mason.
All that's mentioned in the show is that she's called Matlock and she's a lawyer. And so when she was a lawyer, when she was younger, it used to drive her mad that people used to say, oh, like the guy on the TV. And she's like, no, he's an actor. I'm a lawyer.
Oh.
So I don't, so they reference it. So they talk about it all the time. So
This is a show in which Matlock exists. And so she's just another person with the name Matlock. That's pretty funny. I'll check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah. So you should. I would recommend that one. I've only watched the first episode, but I was very pleased with it. It's very clever.
Cool.
All right. Well, then I will see you next week for episode 1 of Pan Am.
Absolutely.
Very exciting. Something
Gorgeous.
neither of us have seen, so that'll be fun.
All right.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening. What's that? You've gone muted.
Sorry, is that pause? That was because my mum was calling.
Okay.
I should just say, as usual, on TikTok, you can find us. I am A Quiet Life with Me. Dan is Dan Watches Movies, which is much more succinct and to the point of what he does. Mine is very ephemeral and not very helpful. And you can find us. We put this live up on Spotify as an audio podcast. If you want to catch us there, if you missed any of us talking about the previous episode. And we will see you next week for Pan Am episode 1.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.